Has Israel claimed responsibility for the pager explosion that happened in Lebanon on Tuesday? There's been no official statement from the Israeli army nor the government, but multiple reports suggest Israel's spy agency Mossad planted a small amount of explosives inside 5,000 pagers ordered by Hezbollah months ago before they detonated yesterday. So far, Hezbollah Health Ministry, the Lebanese Health Ministry, has counted 12 bodies, including 2 children. Nearly 3,000 people have been injured in the blast, among whom is the Iranian ambassador to Beirut, Mojtaba Amani. The Hezbollah group in Lebanon have blamed Israel for the attack, stating that victory over Israel is imminent. Hezbollah fighters switched tactics by using pagers, a long-forgotten technology, after they banned mobile phones earlier this year, stating phones were easier to hack. According to officials, the pagers appear to be that of a Taiwanese brand, but Taiwanese manufacturer Gold Apollo was quick to come out to debunk the allegations, saying no components of the product belonged to them as it wasn't exported by their brand. He hinted the pagers were made by a company in Europe without giving a name. Meanwhile, there have been reports of more blasts in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, 24 hours since the pager explosion that killed up to 12 people and injured thousands more. One of the blasts was reported at a funeral. Other sources say communication devices seem to have exploded. One source told the Reuters news agency that handheld radios bought 5 months ago by Hezbollah have been targeted. Meanwhile, Israeli residents in Jerusalem have congratulated Israel on the explosions. Their thoughts and messages are written in the morning papers. Although the Israeli military has not commented on the incident, Jerusalem residents are congratulating the IDF, saying the bad blood between Israel and Hezbollah will not end without a war.
What I think is that Israel proved again that our imagination is endless. We can hit and get our enemies anytime, and but the problem is, it's something that they never learn, and they'll continue with their agenda to destroy the state of Israel. I just hope that the Israeli government will just continue, surprise our enemies, and end the situation, because it won't end without a war.
I think we're in a war for almost a year, and we're in a war for 70 years. So something needs to happen, and if it's gonna be hard, we will be there and we'll wait until it will end. Israel should fight, and fight hard until we have quiet here. So my kids will have a good life, not like ours.
It was a great thing. I think very clever, very focused, and I thank God that it happened. It's the time to punish the wrong people, the bad people, the ignorant people.
I think well done to the army. Feels like finally the army are doing something to return all the residents of the north back to their homes. And may this be not the first, but definitely on our way to getting our country back to how it was.
Meanwhile, the Israeli cyber expert has commended the operation, indicating those responsible have really good intelligence. Head of cyber in Holon Institute of Technology, Dr. Harold Menashri, said the execution, which suggests took time to plan, may be the start of another war in the Middle East.
It was very nice operation. Of course, the organizations that made this operation have a lot of abilities, have very, very good intelligence and operation abilities, and it shows deep into the Hezbollah organization. It took a lot of time. It took many people to plan it and to make it possible and to bring the abilities to the end. This operation, as I understand it, made to be start of war. And I think that It's made out because it was necessary to bring it out yesterday and not because that was a real time to do it. I think something made the operation made faster or not in the time that the operation need to be. The only problem here is that it's only one-time operation. This operation you can't do again, and it's bring lot of ideas to our enemies also, and they understand from it a lot, and we can't remind it. We can't copy it and remind it again, but they can copy it and try to harm us also in the same way or similar business.
Well, there have been reactions from around the world, starting in the Kremlin, which has warned the pager detonation could become a trigger for a wider regional conflict. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said a thorough investigation into the incident should be conducted, and those behind the blast must be identified. He also noted that this attack should be a course of subject for study by specialists in order to take measures to eliminate similar risks. Similarly, Russia's Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, says the attack in friendly Lebanon represents a serious challenge to international law, adding that organizers purposefully sought to provoke a big war in the Middle East. Turkish President Recep Erdogan expressed his sadness over a phone call with the Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati. Ireland's Deputy Premier Michael Martin says he considers the explosion to be a breach of the Geneva Convention, calling on the international community to reflect on the nature of the attack. Meanwhile, spokesperson for the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says he deeply regrets any civilian deaths. More reactions now. The United States has absolved itself of any involvement in the page explosions in Lebanon. This was relayed by State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, who was briefing journalists in Washington, D.C. Miller stated the U.S. was not aware of any tactics of the attack in advance, as it is still gathering information.
Was the U.S. have any knowledge?
So we are gathering information on this incident. I can tell you that the U.S. was not involved in it. The U.S. was not aware of this incident in advance, and at this point, we're gathering information. We'll continue to collect information. I don't have any public readout to give now, but we're collecting information in the same way that journalists are across the world to gather the facts about what might have happened. Either comment or speculate about the impact of any one incident, especially in the early stages of an incident, and I'm not going to do so here. That's been our consistent policy to try and avoid doing. As is always the case, we would urge Iran not to take advantage of any incident, any instability, to try to add further instability and to further increase tensions in the region. That has been our message to Iran since October 7th. Obviously, we believe that civilians are not legitimate targets for any type of operation, and that no country should be targeting civilians. No country nor organization should be targeting civilians. Members of a terrorist organization are legitimate targets for countries to launch operations against. And those are the principles that we hold ourselves to, and those are the principles we expect other countries to uphold in their operation.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has echoed the State Department's comments, adding that Washington had no knowledge of the incident in Lebanon. Mr. Blinken was speaking at a press conference alongside the Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati in Cairo. He called on all parties to refrain from any actions that could escalate the conflict, reiterating the need for a ceasefire in Gaza, beg your pardon.
The United States did not know about, nor was it involved in these incidents, and we're still gathering the information and gathering the facts. Broadly speaking, we've been very clear, and we remain very clear, about the importance of all parties avoiding any steps that could further escalate the conflict that we're trying to resolve in Gaza, to see it spread to other fronts. It's clearly not in the interest of anyone involved to see that happen. And that's why, again, it's imperative that all parties refrain from any actions that could escalate the conflict. Egypt continues to be an indispensable partner in pursuing a ceasefire in Gaza, one that brings the hostages home, that relieves the suffering of the people of Gaza, and creates the foundation for an enduring peace. I thank the President and the Foreign Minister and other colleagues for Egypt's commitment to this work. And we discussed the importance of getting this deal across the finish line, something we'll continue to pursue along with our Qatari counterparts. We all know that a ceasefire is the best chance to tackle the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, to address the risks to regional stability, risks that I know are felt viscerally here in Egypt. In particular, the Houthis' continued attacks on global commerce in the Red Sea, aided and abetted by Iran, are reducing traffic in the Suez Canal, and that's cost Egypt a projected $5 billion in lost revenue. We've made a tremendous amount of progress over the last month and a half. There are, I think, in the agreement, 18 paragraphs. 15 of them are agreed, but the remaining issues need to be resolved. The most important thing in this moment is seeing a demonstration of political will to finally conclude this agreement. And that's what we discussed. We also discussed in some detail what would be necessary arrangements if an agreement is finally reached in terms of the so-called day after. What happens in Gaza in terms of its governance, its security, its reconstruction. And here as well, Egypt is and will be a critical partner, and I think we had a very useful conversation about that today as well.
The British government has also reacted to the pager explosion, saying it is concerned about the situation in Lebanon. Development Minister Annalise Dodds called the incident awful, speaking on the sidelines of an official trip to Indonesia. She says the UK will be coordinating with humanitarian partners to aid civilian casualties.
So obviously, like many others, I woke up this morning to the news and reports of developments in Lebanon, and this clearly is an awful situation. I'm very concerned to hear about the reports of civilian casualties. Clearly, I don't know all of the details of this. As I say, we woke up to this news, but the UK will be working with, particularly with our humanitarian partners in the region. And I know that you'll understand that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to speculate at this stage.
I want to bring in security expert Chidi Nwonu now. He joins us from the UK. Chidi, great to see you. And fingers are pointing at Mossad. It's clear that this was a high-profile stealth operation. Do you agree that the majority of Israel, do you agree with the majority that Israel is behind the explosions?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. I would suggest, yes, that will be the most likely culprit at this stage. There will be nobody else who has the technology or the ability to launch this kind of operation.
And it does seem to be part of a larger operation by the Israeli government, because this is targeted at the militant group Hezbollah. Let's just pretend that based on their history with each other, I mean Israel and Lebanon and Hezbollah, let's pretend, that based on their history, the Israeli forces are behind the attack. Who else do you think could likely be suspects in such an operation as this?
I mean, the key question one would have would be, again, who has the means, who has the motives, and who has the opportunity? And, there is only one country or actor that has the means to conduct an operation on this scale against such an adversary in this region. So it's very unlikely that any other actor could be able to pull off this type of an operation, or would want to pull off this type of an operation because of the risks of repercussions that would come back. So for now, there is just one suspect, and without any further kind of revelations or evidence, it would seem quite clear that either the Hezbollah bought a batch of really, really faulty pages, or the Israelis are behind this.
Speaking of the repercussions, we've heard officials from the West, especially in the UK, concerned about, what this will result in. Others are concerned that this could open up a new front in this war that Israel is fighting in the Middle East, first with the Hamas militants in Gaza and Hezbollah, which has gone after a number of times in the course of this nearly 1 year war in Gaza. How much worse do you think this could be? Because Lebanon is planning its revenge against Israel for these attacks.
Well, Lebanon itself wouldn't be able to take any action against Israelis. The Lebanese military is quite weak. It's very dependent on foreign supporters, so it's unlikely that they will be doing anything. But Hezbollah itself and its principal ally and sponsor, Iran, will clearly be planning their revenge. And Israelis will have factored in that there will be some sort of retaliation when they were planning and executing this operation. So the question one has to ask is, what can Hezbollah credibly do against Israel that they're not doing already? They would, firing rockets and missiles kind of done already. So they would need some sort of a response that the Israelis aren't expecting. They can't counter would have equal or opposite kind of embarrassing as well as operationally, devastating effect, which is quite difficult for them. This is a fairly complicated, wide-ranging, sophisticated operation. So it's going to be difficult for them to respond in a way that would be kind of comparable to what the Israelis have done, but they will have to respond because that's the nature of this conflict. One side will do something, the other has to respond. And inevitably, as you can see with this operation, it means not only will the guilty suffer, but the innocent will as well.
Do you think this could have any impacts on the peace negotiations that are almost non-existent at this point between the Israelis and the Hamas militants?
Well, I think you've kind of touched on it there, in that these peace negotiations are virtually non-existent. The Israelis unfortunately killed, the last person negotiating with them, and both sides seem quite intractable in their conditions. It's unlikely to have an effect on the peace negotiations because the peace negotiations are in a death spiral of their own. What it does do is it creates further conditions for conflict on Israel's northern border. It reduces the likelihoods that the tension can be ratcheted down, because as I said earlier, there has to be a response from Hezbollah, to which the Israelis will respond, to which Hezbollah and Iran will respond. This escalation ladder will continue being climbed until it gets to a point where the only option is for one to climb down, catastrophically, or to go into all-out conflict.
Now, on the ground, the aftermath of the explosion is great. We have 12 deaths and thousands of people injured. One Lebanese eye surgeon and Parliament member Elias Gerard said that he had been working around the clock since yesterday's attack. He has been treating those victims of the attack. He has to admit that some civilians have been caught up in this. So who bears the responsibility for their deaths?
Well, I mean, there is a lot of discussion about international human rights law and the law of armed conflict, whether this was a portion of attack, whether this was a discriminatory attack, as in it was able to a civilian and military object, and there was a lot of discussion about that. But clearly the fault lies with the attacker. The object in question will be deliberately housed with civilians or hidden by civilians, then the fault always lies with the attacker. The attacker has to make best efforts to reduce civilian casualties and reduce collateral damage. And in this kind of an attack, it is by definition indiscriminating that nobody can determine who was holding the pages at the moment they went off. There's no way of confirming that, away from civilians or innocent people at the time. So from the footage,
Judy, we really can't hear you. We understand you're in transit. Unfortunately, the connection is weaving in and out. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.